everybody, and welcome back to the SF show. So as you can see, today we're joined by special guest Lindsay, who will be speaking to us about Demon SF Consume. So welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you for having me. Big fan, subscriber here.
Thank you very much for joining us. So before we get into it, we're just going to do a quick recap from everybody and just gather everybody's thoughts from the last episode. So yeah, open up the floor for you guys to just share what you thought.
Well, I just discovered how much better I am than INFJ jumpers personally. I think ESTPs rule, but on a serious note, it's just interesting to see how you're meeting at different ends. So you have the same tools and you're just walking the same path, but just a different option of choosing on how to get there.
Great.
Yeah. Guess no one's got anything else to say.
No, it's very well put it, Samuel. I thought it was very interesting to have this meeting with your nemesis, as I like to call them, and it made me very curious about the meeting we're having today and see how the SF Consume can show within the spectrum of saviors and demons. So I'm very excited about today, and thanks for the last time.
Yeah, I had a really hard time following the conversation because I didn't understand what you guys were, like what the problem was that you guys were trying to figure out. So it's taking me some time to tap into your guys' perspective and understand what the hell is going on. But for that reason, it was pretty entertaining. It was like watching issues.
Well, I guess in a nutshell, basically he was trying to be more in the moment and stop planning, and I'm just trying to slow down and think before I do anything. That was in a nutshell. And then because of the info animals not being balanced, it's kind of hard to do that and then still chill with the tribe at the same time, because I was like, I need to stay away from these people so I can go in. And he's like, oh, I kind of need to start responding to these people, but I want to do my own thing. So
Last did a very good job.
cheers.
Yeah, no, I'm the same as Hannah. I did have a hard time following like the actual content of what you guys were speaking about, but I think as you've just given like a summary, I think obviously the gist kind of makes sense. But I think one thing that I took away was this idea that, you know, when he's going through his animals, and from by the time he gets to the play, it's kind of like a very diluted version. And I feel like all of us to some extent can relate to that with our own last animals. But that was just something that I took away in terms of how that is showing up and what the diluted version of the play looks like when it's kind of all the way down at the bottom. And I thought that was really interesting. And I thought your questions were very, very interesting as well, Sam. So I appreciate had a really good conversation last time. So thanks.
Pat myself on the back. Cheers.
Yeah, here's a cookie. Okay, great. So we're just going to get into it. So as you can see, Lindsay is Consume last, SF Consume last. So we're going to be having a bit of a back and forth, just gathering some information about kind of how she experiences that. And yeah, so I will open it up first of all by just asking a general question about kind of, Lindsay, how you're seeing Consume showing up in your life and like what your relationship with that is like at the moment.
Well, I feel like each year I kind of get a layer deeper with actually understanding what my Demon SF Consume looks like or what it doesn't look like. And so it's a continual realization process. And I think what I've been kind of noticing and processing recently is the fact that my awareness of what may or may not be bothering me or might, like, it takes longer for me to even notice what it is in the first place. Like, I'm not consuming that environment at a rate that allows me to like take that data and then use it to make a decision. It's like that's something that happens much longer. Like, it takes a lot longer for that to happen. And you know, one example I've been mentioning recently, because this is where I really saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, I see how real this is I fall asleep right away when I'm like sleeping at night. But there's this one night I was having trouble sleeping, and I was like, gosh, like, why am I not falling asleep? Like, and it was like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And then like around like 40 minutes, I realized like my neck was kind of uncomfortable. And I realized it was because like how my hair was tied behind my head was like pushing my head up at a weird angle. And I was like, oh, I think my like bun is like bothering me. Like, I think it's hurting my neck because it's like pushing my neck up weird. And that's actually what's making it hard for me to sleep. And so then sure enough, like I take it out and like I fall asleep right away.
Yeah.
But it was like, that was cool because it was like a timeline associated with the SF consume in reality.
Right.
How am I feeling about something in particular real life situation? And it took me 40 minutes to realize that the problem was, oh, my neck is uncomfortable. That's why I can't sleep, because of there's like this stupid thing on the back of my head, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I've been processing more and more recently is like, again, like, you know, demon SE problems, you're missing reality, right? But then how does that affect the self? That is, that's really how it's, you know, being wrapped up. And I'm starting to see it more and more like that all the time. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're kind of talking about mindfulness in a way, like just being mindful of your presence and
yeah,
kind of what that looks like in the moment. So is that something that you're like consciously trying to practice now? Like, are you trying to be a little bit more mindful of things like that? Like how, like since you've had that realization, like what has changed, or is there anything that you've thought, oh, I need to start doing more of this?
Yeah, I think it's just more tapping into real life, but like consciously. Like I realize what, you know, David's trying to say, like you're always going to be doing your saviors. Like it's just like it's default. You can't I can't like work my way to like better SE and like be a better, like I'm always, my brain is always going to fire in a particular direction, and that just is what it is, right? But at the same time, if I'm starting to like flex the SC FI muscle more consciously, like just in ways that I can see it, in ways I can apply it in real life, it just makes it a little bit stronger, a little bit more accessible. So I am trying more. I was reading this bit on kind of like mindfulness, and it was actually related to Japanese architecture, but it was it was talking about how to things that you already do every day to bring more richness into those moments of things that you already have to do. And so, for example, if you make tea every morning, like how can you make your tea a little bit more interesting? Like make it like, you know, better in some kind of way, and like make it more of an experience, right? And then how that actually helps us to produce better memories, because we are kind of bringing more like intention into a present moment. And that connected with me so much. I'm like, wait, I feel like I can actually do that, because it's like, again, it's things that you would be doing anyway, right? So I already have the time allotted for it, which is like my thing. I'm like, I don't want to do something that takes more time out of my like life, because everything's kind of structured the right way, and I don't want to have to like go practice this thing or whatever, you know. But it's like, no, you can incorporate it in what you're already doing, right? So that's what I've been kind of trying to focus on recently.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's a really kind of good way to practice it, because it like consume shows up wherever you are, and kind of whatever is you know being presented to you in the moment. And that's like SF consume is like it's wherever you are. So there's always an opportunity for you to practice like that consume based on kind of whatever it is you're doing. And I feel like that's kind of how I experience SF consume. It's like just this willingness to accept whatever is being presented to me in the situation with like an open curiosity. Like an example that I use is like I've always been like, people have always said that I have this kind of like childlike curiosity, or this childlike approach to life, where because every time everything that happens, I kind of experience it as if it's happening for the first time, even if it's something that I've experienced before. I always like react to it as if it's like happening for the first time. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This isn't like or like the other day, my mom brought home some white eggs, and we don't have like white eggs very like much in the UK, but she brought home some white eggs, and I know that they're a thing in America, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm so excited to see white eggs, even though I've seen white eggs before. But it was just this whole, I love that. I was just in awe. I was like, oh my God, white eggs, how amazing is this? And it's just kind of like, for me, that's how I experience like SF consume. It's just this willingness to be open and curious about whatever it is coming your way. And yeah, you can absolutely like practice mindfulness, whatever it is that you're doing, even the bad things that you're doing, or even if you're having a bad day, or you know, you're feeling particularly stressed or something like that. That's always an opportunity just to be curious and be like, okay, let me just accept this as it is, and just kind of be present with this and experience this, whatever it is. So I think that's
I love that. And one question I kind of have for you guys, like on the inverse of that, is like, when it comes to, you know, when it comes to consuming like your environment, right, and like the space around you, the time and place of where you are in this current moment, right? Again, it's something, a mark I'm always missing. And it's funny because SE, like saviors in my life, will always be like, how did you not see that? Like, this thing is like, they'll like point something out, and I'm so slow to even understand like what they're looking at or what they're listening to, that I completely miss it. And they're like, oh gosh, like you missed it, you know? I'm just like, I'm like 10 steps behind, man. Like I'm so like slow to like realize like, what's this thing that's happening in reality that I'm completely unaware of, you know, just, but so on the other end for you guys, how does it feel to be in this, like in the shoes of like being so aware of the physical reality, the present moment? Like, is that, because like I can say from like an NI perspective, like, yeah, I'm like always like stimulating like what's about to happen. Like I'm always kind of like two steps ahead. So I'm like missing the step I'm currently taking. But for you guys, what does it feel like to be more aware of the present moment? And can that ever be like a hard thing in terms of being too aware of what's going on?
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah,
for me, definitely can be too much of a hard thing. It can get overwhelming, in the sense that sometimes it feels like I'm overstimulated, like I'm taking too much of what, you know, too much of things in, like I'm too aware, I'm just noticing things too much, and sometimes it's hard to kind of process every little thing, so it can feel overstimulating. But also I think because of like the SE is kind of like just very open and curious about whatever's happening, sometimes you don't need to be present for every single experience. So sometimes I could put myself in a situation that I don't need to be in because it's harmful to my like well-being or something, but because of that SE and that need to just be open and accepting of whatever it is that's coming, like you just end up being like absorbing just bad experiences that you probably
interesting
don't need to have, that you could probably just learn something from it just by hearing that somebody else has gone through it. Like you don't need to be present for that experience.
You're open to the experience, and therefore you have to take it on. Interesting.
That's kind of how I would see it, as like a bad thing. Like there's just some experience that looking back, I just think I didn't need to be there. I didn't need to be present for this, but I felt like I needed to be because, you know, I have to know. I have to have
a savior. Yeah.
And
that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I basically resonate with her, and I find it annoying because I know what it is I want to do. I know what's my goal, but I'm super sensitive to anything that moves. Like literally right now in my home gym, the rain's just happened and it's leaked in, and now there's just a drop and a drop, and I just keep paying attention to it. So yeah, on that side, it's like, I don't know if you've ever watched like a martial arts film and you've got that guy meditating, and then all of a sudden he can just like know the grass is moving here, birds flying. That's what it feels like for me, especially if I'm riding my motorcycle and it's a nice day and I'm just in the mode. You're supposed to be thinking, and I am, but it's just, I'm just addicted to sensation, so much to the point where every now and again I lift the visor just because I want the wind to go on my face while I'm riding, because it feels free.
That's awesome. And I can't imagine having that level of like sensitivity. Like I can see how that would be almost like distracting, being so aware of, like you're saying, like the grass moving.
Yeah. But I will say, like there is beauty in it, like especially like I don't know about the like SF play, but like for SF consume in particular, like there is beauty in being aware of those like tiny little moments. Because when you're really like present, and just non-judgmental about whatever moment that you find yourself in. Like you can be completely like surprised in it, like pleasantly surprised by kind of the beauty in the moment. Like I will wake up most mornings and I'll like the first thing that I'll notice is like maybe like the sun is shining in my eyes, or I can hear like people downstairs, and I can smell like food being cooked, and I just feel like euphoric for no reason, because I'm just here and I get to be here and I get to be present and I get to like experience
That's awesome.
the moment, like whatever it is. And so there is magic to it, and there is like beauty especially for like SF consume, because when you find yourself fully present in a moment, and it's something that's like in your FI, like you just feel a state like this intense euphoric feeling that you don't want time to slow. You don't want time to like keep moving. You just want to be here like forever, and you just don't want to. And so I think there is magic in it.
That is magic. You're right. And for the SI, so what actually made me think of this question in the first place was the other day, I was like, and I have to ask this to someone who has either sensory and or SI. And I was like, oh wait, it's good. I'm going to be talking to the SF show in like a week. But I had spilled something on the floor, and of course, story of my life. And I was like down, I had to be down on like my hands and knees to clean it up. And so like I'm down on the floor level, like cleaning up whatever this goo is. And then I'm like looking like around on the floor level, and I'm like looking at like the baseboards and like the corners of like the room. And I was like, oh, this is kind of like, this is dirty. Like I guess I should technically clean this, you know? And like, but like when I was down at that level, like really narrowed in, I could like, all of a sudden I could see, you know, all of like the sensory that like is conveniently like unseeable when you're just like walking around and like living life, you know? But like, so it was like really like that up close, like narrowed view. And I was like, and then I felt like this like sense of burden. I was like, oh gosh, I was like, is this like a snapshot of what it's like to have SI, where you're always so narrowed in on like these real points in reality, like whatever that point is, that like you have to see everything, and therefore like you have to be responsible for it. Because like when I was down there on the floor, I was like, well, I guess I have to clean the baseboards now because like I can see that they're filthy, you know? But do you feel like that burden in real life?
Emmanuelle, do you want to go first?
I know. I do need time to process too. Okay.
I'm gonna go first.
Ready to go. Just let it sink in a minute.
I think so, but I think that I don't do the same thing that Maria does. I'm a bit more like you, where I'm tracking, like my OI is in the sensory, but I'm not looking at everything. I'm just like looking, it's like I'm following lines. And then when I see something new, that it's almost also like a version of Demon SE, but then I have the responsibility to put it into my SI, and then I get a new line. And I totally relate to that. Sometimes I intentionally don't look at stuff that closely, because then I have to, it's especially with the cleaning. If I know that there is a filthy corner, I'm like, it's always like in the back of my mind, I have to clean it. But the problem is you can always zoom in more and more. There's almost no limit to how granular reality is. So just don't look there. Don't look there. It's a trap.
Yeah, I really look at it like the tunnel vision. Like if something falls on the floor, I can really just pick up the things that are on the floor, but not see anything else. It doesn't exist. And like my sight is always moving towards something. Like you said, I'm 2 steps ahead. So I'm not seeing I'm in the train, and I'm only thinking about when we arrive, and I'm not seeing everything around. So like I had to learn how to take the time to look around and to be present in some way, you know, the same, like, okay, let's have a, big look at the stuff and take responsibilities of stuff that are around. Make time to do the present, not only time to go towards the goals. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, it makes sense. OI is already so narrowed, like whether it's SI or NI, it's like we've already filtered out so much stuff, and then it's hard to always, it's hard to see what you filtered out because it's already gone.
Yeah. I have a question that kind of relates to that in my mind. Maybe it doesn't make sense to you guys, but so because you were talking about kind of the outside world and having a hard time taking that in, what about your bodily sensations? Because I've heard that from people with NI at the top, and as I understand, you're quite athletic. So I'm wondering, what's your experience as an athletic person? Do you feel like it helps you tap into the SF consume in a kind of way?
I mean, I think like with anything I've ever done, I think like the sleeping example was a good example of like the bodily sensation of like how it's very slow in terms of processing it, and the thing is like I am visual. So for me to like, if it was something like related to like athletics, or even like I went to school for like music was one of my majors. So even when it came to like, practicing my instrument and like getting better at something in reality, what's always helped me is like videotaping myself and then watching it back and then doing it over and over again. And like sometimes I would have to rewatch a video like that I made a mistake in multiple times to like even be able to like pick apart like, where am I messing this up? Like I know it's in here because the end result isn't what it's supposed to be, but like what actually is it? And like I would slow down the videos, like I would have to like reconsume that moment, because like in the moment it happens so fast, like it's hard to take in all that data in real time. So for me, like the videotaping thing and then watching back and like processing through that has probably been the most helpful thing as it relates to doing anything in reality and like getting better at it.
And what about, sorry, this is maybe a weird SI question. What about, for example, just drinking water? I know this sounds silly, but I've heard this from another person with NI at the top, that she's like, I don't know when to drink water. I don't drink water.
Oh gosh, I never feel thirsty. And it was like, like several years ago, like when like, I mean, I basically was able to like successfully like deplete my body of like every needed thing and like push it to the point where it was like so dangerous because of like the fact like I'm like I can NI squeak by, like I can disrespect the sensory to just about this threshold before like it's significantly bad. But it's like I should have never done that in the first place. It was just like I knew I could get away with it. Like I could estimate, and I guess I could get away with it like to this point and that I should be okay. But it's like, yeah, and that whole thing ties into the whole water thing and whatever. But like, it's like you're not aware of the sensation. I'm never thirsty, like, and it's like, but I know I need water, and then I'll have like, well, why do I have a headache later? And then it's like, oh, well, yeah, I haven't drank water all day. Then it's like, okay, well, and then it's like trying to factor that into a frequency of your life to then like take it in more, but it's just like, yeah, very disconnected with the sensation of, I think, multiple sensory things. It's just like a delay, it's just like you're literally slow in that area.
Yeah.
Got a question for you quickly then. So looking at your cousins or twins or whatever you want to call them, the ESFP, the consume first, instinctually, how do you react to them when you see them doing the consume more than you do it?
I just see them being much more aware. Like they have this muscle flex, like they have this, like whatever their FI is attached to, which really could be anything, it could be like, like Maria is like saying like how in the morning, like she has this like nice experience that she really enjoys, like when it's like waking up and like it smells the house, right? So like everyone's FI is attached to different things. but I think with the SEFI consumes, it's like they're just so aware of like what those things are, you know, and so like they haven't. It's like they have an answer. They have an answer of like the things that they like and like dislike, and it's just very nonchalant because they're taking in the environment. They're filtering through things for their own FI's sake, right? But they're taking through the spectrum of sensory experiences so that they're able to develop and really curate that FI to really be what it is, you know. We don't like our FI isn't just like it's so personal. It's not just like doesn't just happen overnight. You know, we go through life's experiences and have moments and collect things, and then like we kind of create this like treasure of like what our FI is associated to. And with SE first, it's like they're taking in such a spectrum that FI is so refined and like so well flexed, that like I really admire that in them, you know, because that awareness to be like, know that like, oh yes, this would be the best experience for me. This is something I'd like to do right now. Like this really like resonates with me. It's like it's almost like a no-brainer. And if they want to like, if they're kind of on the fence, it's like because they have like multiple options that could be good, and like then they get to decide from there, you know. Whereas I'm more in the position of like, yeah, there's definitely things that like my FI loves, right? But like, how does that relate to reality now? Like, how do I apply that in real time? Like, sometimes it just doesn't really feel connected, you know?
Yeah, when we're talking about the SF and how you kind of see them flex, basically I wanted a bit more sensory from you in the sense, when you're saying it doesn't apply, you're finding it hard to apply what you like into the sensory world. What does that mean to you? Like, give me a little bit more.
Well, it's like in a given situation, it's like having a defined preference, I think is the best way to say it. And I find like a lot of like in a lot of different contexts, it's like I'm rather indifferent on a lot of things, you know, because I'm not really filtering through like how it affects me in reality. And it's like that's kind of like not what the NI's after. It's like, well, is this like if we throw this dart down, you know, this hallway, like is it going to end in the right spot? You know, and like as long as it is, like, okay, great. Like, and then there are other that will ripple into other things, right? And some of that it may ripple into is the SEFI consume, right? But in a lot of moments, like as those stages, as like that plan is being as it's going forward, I'm not really thinking about how it's affecting me, like in the present, or you know, like and like if that and then if my preference, like if I had thought about it more and filtered it more, would I make some adjustments to like how I throw that dart, you know? And so because I'm not going through as many of the lived experiences, like I have such a narrowed like FI because of like my experience. And so there's so many things that like are outside of that I'm just like, I don't have a preference on because like I'm not going through those motions, you know? And so, but it's like, well, if I just kind of simulated it, right? If I did like the NIFI sleep thing, it's like, I could process the fact that like, okay, well, you know, in this circumstance, this would probably be more beneficial to me and I might feel this way about it more or whatever. But like, again, that takes more time. Like that's slow sleep processing. It's a slower process. And so I'm kind of just, you know, I have sleep third and consume last. I'm just kind of pushing those. And, you know, so it's often like later on or after like the target's been hit, sometimes I'll think about, like, actually, if I would have thought about this more, I might have done it a different way because of the fact of how it does affect me in reality. Like I could have just fine-tuned something really small and it could have benefited me more, you know? But I'm not really thinking about that, nor do I have the developed preference in the first place. On the front end, it's coming on the back end. So
And then
How do you
last follow-up. If you was to put your consume into like Idiot's Guide little steps for yourself, what is like your step-by-step where you're doing like, oh, I'm brushing my teeth every day?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say like, you know, how does this affect my current day, or how will this affect, you know, subsequent days for me personally on a selfish, like no other reason but for my self purpose, like what impact does this have on me in reality? Am I happy with that outcome? You know, is that a positive thing or is it a negative thing, right? If it's negative, like if it's negative or if it's like not, you know, preferable, is there a way that I could do or approach it better that would be more beneficial? And you know, then is that something that could be applied? So that's kind of how I would root down it. It's just, again, it's being intentional to even go down that path in the first place, to say that it is a priority. Like my SF consume is a priority, when my brain inherently is saying it's not. Just, you know, just throw the dart, hit the target. That's all that matters, you know, but it's really not all that matters.
I've got to say that, oh, sorry, Emmanuelle, sorry, you go.
Yeah, just I'm wondering, because you're talking about the targets and the goals, and eventually having the consume helping through the process to reach the goal. But how do you approach it as refining what the goal should be? Because I guess if you have like masculine eyes, like go there, but maybe how do you see it? You know, to get some spectrum could help you within, you know, the what goal should be made. How do you see that?
Yeah. For me, I see it less playing a factor in what the goal is. Like usually the goal is what it's going to be. Like it's kind of like masculine and eyes are like determine that, you know. But it's like there's so many things that happen in the process to getting there. And kind of like I was talking about earlier with like, you know, if you make tea every morning, like what is some like additional like richness you can bring into that thing that you already have to do that benefits you more? It's kind of like that bit applied to like, listen, we're going to be hitting the target no matter what. But like, is there a way that we can get there that is more beneficial? Like, are there things that we already have to do, but then could we fine tune those things in a way that is more beneficial to us, that is more fulfilling to us personally? Because like, this is our life. We have to go, you know, through these experiences to get us from like being born to death. And it's like, well, yeah, there are these targets that we're trying to hit along the way, but is there an additional richness you can bring into life as you're going there? You know, like the goal is important, you know, but living a life along the way is also important. I think that's kind of what I'm working on. Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, Maria. Host has to go first.
No, I was just gonna say, I kind of feel like I'm on a similar journey with you, because I feel like the process of refining the FI for me also is not as quick as you might think it is. Like I have a theory that like the FISEs have a more like purer consume than like the SEFIs, because
for sure, yeah,
because like I might be aware that this is something that's going to benefit me in the moment, and this is, you know, an experience that I really, really enjoy. But because the SE is at the top, I'm obligated to try everything else as well. Even at the expense of this experience that I really, really love. And so as well, if I'm also not doing the NF sleep, if I'm not kind of setting boundaries for myself and narrowing down and just kind of getting rid of some options, I end up kind of missing out on having an experience that I really, really love, that would be really beneficial for me, because I'm still trying to chase all of these other pointless random experiences that are irrelevant just for the sake of I need to try them all kind of thing. So I think
gotcha.
Yeah.
And I'm the inverse, because I'm like, I'm not trying to chase anything.
Yeah. So it is a slow process
yeah.
for me as well, like finding out my FI, because I have to kind of shut off that part of my brain that tells me that all experiences are good experiences. No, they're not. They're not all experiences. There are certain experiences that I like on a scale of 0 to 10, like this is a 9 out of 10 in terms of how much I enjoyed it, how much I loved it. This one was a 2 out of 10, but I still feel obligated to try them all, because so it's just not all experiences are good experiences, and I don't need to have them all. So that process of finding my FI is also just as, I think, is maybe a little bit faster than yours, but still just slower than.
Yeah, it still is a filtering process, all the same. Yeah, that makes sense.
Random thing quickly. What type is Michael Jackson?
I don't know.
FISE double masculine. Yeah.
It was NI. Something NI.
FINI?
No.
I
Yeah.
don't remember hearing his type.
No. Because I was just thinking.
And for some reason, yeah.
I know he's basically in your quadra, but I'm not sure if it's the F first. I think it's the N first.
Yeah. No.
But it just made me laugh about the whole his song "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough" because I don't think he can sing savior.
FI first, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, random shit. You know how it
Correct
is.
this in the comments.
Yeah. Hannah, you had a question or a thought?
I was wondering, I'm sorry. Do you have some passion, hobbies, like something that you gathered, flexing your conscious muscle, and you didn't see that coming, and you're quite fond of?
Yeah,
Sorry, Emmanuelle, just before we answer that, sorry, I just wanted to hear Hannah's question just before.
I forgot the question.
Oh, okay.
I don't. It doesn't matter. It was just a dumb G question.
That's
you
fine.
think of it again, let us know. Hobbies. I have one hobby right now. I kind of go from like, I'll do a hobby for like 10 years, I swear. And it's like, then I like go to a new one, but it's like a 10-year cycle. I don't know. It's very strange.
That's a lifestyle. That's
huh?
a lifestyle. That's not a hobby. That's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Carry on. My bad.
But about like 2 years ago, I picked up like playing poker online, and then I got into playing live about like a year later, which was like a terrifying the whole sensory thing was like absolutely terrifying, like for 6 months, like I would say, like actually like put me through like the SC ringer of like there's so much happening. And like I really like the NT nerd aspect of the game. Like it's very like there's like a lot of like math, there's also like a lot of psychology, there's a lot of like personal psychology you have to be aware of, and like but it's also like decision making. It's an NT dream, but most people don't look at it that way, right? But for me, that's how I approach the game. But playing in a live environment, you're impacted by a ton of different sensory and a ton of like human interactions, and it's just like it's very overwhelming. And so it's taken about a year for me to get it to a place where like I can now walk into that environment and feel comfortable. But it's helped me learn so much about FE, FI, about other people's psychology. And what it really made me realize is as NT, we're trying to like NT solve these problems that don't need to be NT solved. Like there's so many things that, from like a theoretical perspective, I'm like, well, how humans should behave in this way. And like, if I want to be better at social interactions, I should approach them with this way, or like looking at things this way, or if I learn more about humans in this way, then I should be able to have, and it's like, no, you just need to go out and talk to people, Lindsay. Like, you just need to go out and like real life and like be around other people and like, just kind of like go through the experience and like go through like the heuristics of like human interaction. And like, guess what? You get better and it's less uncomfortable. And so it's like NT is like, how do I solve like the human dilemma? Like, but it's like, you can just go out and be with people, know? And like, that was such a revelation of like, oh, you can get more comfortable by being with people in real life, So I feel like I'm like still I would just say like socially, I feel so much more comfortable now because I've gone through more experiences with being around more people and having more just like, trivial interactions than like all the studying I've ever done in psychology combined. It's just like, yeah, you just have to do the SC sometimes. And sure, the psychology, the OP, all that is so helpful then into like the understanding aspect, right? So you can understand the world, but then still go into a situation and feel like so discombobulated and so like flustered because it's like you're not flexing an SC muscle, how do I even lift up this thing? Oh gosh, I know theoretically how I should lift it up. It's like, well, have you tried lifting it up?
That's so funny. As you were saying that, like my entire life's problems just kind of started to make sense, because I'm just thinking that's why I'm so obsessed with this question of the human dilemma. I've just been trying to like do the NT this whole time, as you were saying. But I had a question about like an info question, in terms of sharing info and hearing the info. Like, how do you see the consume last coming up in like conversations that you have with like trying to do the back and forth with people?
I mean, so what's good about the poker table is the fact that one thing you can always talk about is like the cards, like, you know, like how, like aspects of how the game is played, and like if that's in my OI box, like I'm good with that. Like I can always talk about that, so I always have like something in my pocket, you know. But the thing is like generally in social interactions, and this is where it's hard when you're in like the wild environment outside of a specific context, is like I don't know anything in sports. I don't know what show's been on. I haven't seen a movie in years. Like I am so disconnected with like the current events things, you know, like what just recently, I don't watch the news, you know, like I don't know. And so I'm unable to have that kind of banter because I'm just unplugged from that context. And so I think that's one of the reasons why growing up, I always, and you know, born, consume last, like live, consume last my whole life. I think that's why, looking back when I was younger, I was really uncomfortable in a lot of social situations because people were aware of things like in the SF consume realm, and that they're just doing like their saviors. They're just kind of like talking about what they've consumed and whatever. And I'm just like so disconnected from like what it felt like people did or what people knew. Yeah. And so I was like, then I would kind of go back into my corner and be like, well, how do I figure this out? Like, how do I figure out how to like have friends, you know, because they like all know these things to talk about and know these things to kind of communicate on. But I don't understand, you know? And so, but it was I was just consume less. I was just out of touch with what, you know, what was relevant to people.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, suddenly this running gag that Dave and Shan have about like Dave not knowing any of the celebrities that they type is starting to make sense. Just like,
the only reason I know any celebrity is because of OP, and I feel cool now when like there's like a celebrity like on a commercial or something like that, and I walk into a room and I'm like, oh, I know who that is. That's Anna Kendrick. And it's the only reason anyone who knows me knows the only reason I know any person is because we've typed them in class. And they're like, oh, did you type that person in OP? And I'm like,
that's so funny. Like, I always think that Dave is trolling when he's like, I don't know who this person. I'm like, how like, are you living under a rock? How do you not know who this person is? Probably been on every TV since the beginning of time. It's so funny.
I think it was when we were typing Jamie Foxx. We typed Jamie Foxx, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was him that I asked a friend of mine. I was like, do you know who Jamie Foxx is? And he was like, are you serious? He's like, and I was like, oh, my default was like, oh, maybe people don't know who he is. He's like only one of the most famous actors, like, and is in like every good movie like ever. And I was like, oh. But was like so offended that like I didn't know, or that I would even ask that question of, do you know who Jamie Foxx is? You know,
that's how it feels. It's like, whoa, like how do you not, like, doesn't everybody know? That's how it feels like trolling.
Can I ask you something? Maybe this is like, guys, tell me if this is not allowed to ask us a question, but do you know what your social type is?
Oh.
I don't know.
Okay, I was just thinking, like, I'm just processing this out loud. We can cut this out if this is not allowed, okay? I don't know if this is like not allowed information.
That's what you think she did.
I was thinking, because you said you had to learn how to make friends because you didn't know what to talk with them about. Could it be that you also save your flex and that it's double hard for you because even though you have save your DE, maybe you have demon, so it's harder to.
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, I'm still filtering and processing the whole like the social types bit. And so I'm always like slower to like respond to those things because I'm like, let me take this in for a while, really simmer on it and like, you know, feel like I understand it first. But Yeah, I think Dave actually, when I was talking to him not too long ago, he thought I had flexed over friends. But yeah, I think, the whole friendship, like human to human thing is hard. Just having like NT over like SF, it's just because like you're not meeting people in reality. And so, looking back at my life, it's like I was missing people. And then like the thing is like I'm very happy like just like doing my own thing, right? Like I could just go operate and do my own thing, like solo, like very independent, like all day, like not even think twice about it. But then you'll kind of stop sometimes when you're like, wait, like you feel like less human because like humans have these interactions and like they have these conversations and these dynamics, and then it's like, well, like I'm not doing that. And then it's like, well, then when you try, you feel like it's really hard, or like you can't really do it. And so but again, it's just kind of like inherently you're not prioritizing it, right? You're not putting yourself in those kinds of environments. And it's not higher like ranking, right, in your own psyche. So yeah, it's I feel like NT kids struggle in their own way to like then like eventually they kind of ramp up later in life.
Yeah, sounds like you're kind of overthinking it a little bit, kind of.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely overthinking it.
Yeah, you also have double feminine consume, right?
Yeah, so it's like all over the place. Like I can't even catch it with like like a mile long net if I tried. And and I think it's also because like the SF consume is very flexible and movable, and like it does change, and like it does change preference, and like so then it's like then you kind of question your own like reality of like, wait, do I even know, like like why does this thing keep moving around?
Yeah.
It feels very hard to hold on to.
Yeah.
But then I think earlier in OP I kind of understood that double feminine aspect of it, and I just accepted the fact that like what I like in reality will change, and like I can embrace the fact that that's like a moving fluid thing. It doesn't have to be, because like the masculine NI is like, no, but it must be consistently this way as we move forward, so that we know how to predict for what it needs, manage its needs in the future. Like we have to allot it its time, and if things are so fluid like that, then like we might have like the wrong time along into it. Like I know that sounds probably crazy, but I instead reframed it to say like this will move and change, and like that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of putting it, because I definitely feel like that all the time in terms of like my identity and like my consume being fluid. Like I always say this, but I'm never the same person that I was. Like I can't even say that I'm the same person that I was a week ago, just because I'm always like changing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is very, very fluid, and I think you just kind of have to accept that that it's changed. You could wake up one day and just suddenly just feel differently or see things differently. That's also kind of like the beauty of it, because it's really just that openness and just being willing to go with the flow and whatever, just being really just curious about whatever's going to be thrown at you. I think it's the hardest part, especially if it's human, but there's also like as well.
Well, maybe it's a good time to give you a compliment, because I think that even though you have demon SE, I think you have a really distinct style still. And that is something that you don't always see. Like it's all very well put together on the video. I don't know how you run around in real life, but you can definitely tell that you put in some effort, and it doesn't look demon SE to me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's, and how I said earlier, how like watching myself back on video has always been like a training component of like getting better at something. And I think literally in the videos, when I started recording videos for YouTube, I was having to just like process self, and like, what does self look like? What does self environment look like? And again, you don't see everything right away. It takes a while, but then over time, right, if you're reconsuming the same information, right, and then it starts to come into your OI box, and then you start to be like, how can I control it? Like how can I and it just helped, I think, bring a lot of self-awareness like during that time period, because I was forced to, like the months that went by of videos that like I never uploaded when I first started the channel, because I'm like, this is so weird the having to look back at self and like hear self and see self is just, in a lot of ways, it's unbearable at first. I think for a lot of people, no matter what your type is, it's just very weird. But then it's like, okay, well, then you can like start to learn from that. But I think what was hard for me in the beginning, like, whereas a good friend of mine, she's SCFI, a friend of mine from college, and she could like look at something and immediately know like what she needs to change to make it better, or like make it more aesthetic or something like that. But for me, it would take like, I have to look at something and like, I can't define what I don't like about it at first. Like, why does this, like my earlier videos, why does this look weird? Why does this not look good? I don't know. Like, I couldn't tell you, right? Because I had to consume it so much and take it in. And then it's like, oh, Lindsay, like the camera is like 3 inches from your face and like you're like pressed up like next to the thing behind you. Like, that's why it looks weird, you know? And it's like, it just takes so long to be like, okay, that's the thing. And then it's like, I've defined it. Now, how do I change it? Right. And then it's like, you watch a YouTube video, you're like, oh, okay, this thing. And then it's like, okay, well, now that's in the OI box. I can apply that moving forward. But like the process of like identifying what you want, what isn't right and what you want to change. And then I think like once you start picking up on it, it's an evolution process that's a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah, you have to get the ball rolling first and then it just builds on itself.
Yeah.
And do you have some things in your mind that you know you would like to go explore, but it's like in the back of the mind for many, many years, and you're always like, I will go there someday, sometime, but you never go, and you never, you know, for now, you never went yet, but it's like
it's
a
there.
fantasy dream, like, yeah, I'll do that, or
yeah, it's I definitely have. So one thing I've always wanted to do is and it's one of those things that I think I really will do eventually at some point, but it's just like now isn't the time, and like that's something I get to look forward to at some other point in life, is like telling stories visually through like music, like using music and video. And so like you could say like creating like music videos, but it's more the like, there's just certain things that like when I hear it paints such a visual to me, and like it'll happen like not every song, not all the time, but like sometimes I'll hear a song and I'll see exactly like from beginning to end like this whole thing, this whole story. And I'm like, gosh, like I really want to capture that now like on video and be able to tell that story about whatever's happening. And sometimes it's related to music, sometimes it's not really, seemingly, but it's just and you know, I've always, you know, I started playing music when I was really young, so I've always had a part of my FI that's very attached to music, you know. But then there's also this visual component and this NI storytelling component, and so that's something I want to do eventually down the road.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. Well, you've got an audience in me if ever you want to kind of bring that out.
Thank you.
Just drop the link. Okay, cool. So like just before we finish up, I just want to ask quickly, just if you've got like a nugget to share with someone who's probably like struggling with doom and consume, like what would be your takeaway or something that you've learned that you would want to kind of pass on knowledge to someone else as well?
I mean, I think one of the biggest things is I love watching people with SF, and you know, because those are my demons as relates to my consume. I love watching videos of people with SF high, and then SF consume high, and just I love taking in how they take in the world, you know. And it's almost like if you kind of unconsciously like take in some of that material, it can help you just like fine tune like how your perspective needs to be if you were to have that like to be more flexible muscle, right? And so again, it's kind of an NT way of like trying to like engineer your way to like, you know, have the right perspective. And it's like at the end of the day, like you just need to like go out into the environment and like go through more of the life experiences so that you can filter through your own context of what you do value. And that's coming from the spectrum, multiple, like various, you know. And that's what's so hard for me is like, I'm like, I did this one thing in the world, like can't that be enough? Like, can't that, like, doesn't that fit the bill? And it's like, I'm not even answering to anyone, like, but it's just like for myself. So like, I'm only hurting myself, but like, I just want that to be enough, and it's just really like, sometimes you have to grind it out and like go through multiples so that you can define that for yourself. And then also live in the meantime, go through the experiences of living in the meantime. So that would be my suggestion, is like, it's great to like put the hat on of someone else who has it as a savior, because that can kind of inherently get you to know what to look for, I think, in certain contexts. But then also, just going out and actually taking in the real world by going through a spectrum of experiences is also important.
Yeah.
What do you know? Actually doing the thing.
Yeah.
I so relate to that.
Yeah, I think we're gonna all learn something from that. Like with the last animal, anyway, it always feels like, oh, I've done it once this year, isn't that enough? Like,
yeah, it's like
I have to do it again. Like, come on,
it's not enough. Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
And then we get surprised, by it.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like, whoa, it's come back again. Like, well, thank you so much, Lindsay. It's been a pleasure having you. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, any last words or anything like that?
How do I find NT chicks?
Oh God.
Oh gosh. In like the nerdiest place you can find them.
So,
The library. Go to the library.
I don't go to that. Yeah, I hear it.
Save us a call for the library. We got it.
Okay, cool. Well, that's a wrap for today, guys. Thank you so much for everyone who's watching, and we will catch you all in the next episode. But yeah, if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, drop them in the comment section below, or just post it on Facebook or whatever. But yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.
All right. It's a good time to be a guy. I'm just surrounded by chicks nowadays.
Player.
I know, right?
Eh bien, c'est pas ça, tu peux passer par derrière en fait et monter sur les petits troncs pour pouvoir couper. Le reste. Mais t'es pas obligé, Martin. Okay, tu peux fermer la porte s'il te plaît? Comme ça.
French sounds sexy, man. Oh my days. All right, she's good. All right.
Okay, so I'm just gonna count us all in, and then I'm just gonna start.
This is not weird at all. We're
Observer fumble.
I know, right?
These are the people.
The deciders will be laughing at us right now.
I know. It's like, you guys can see that this is real right now, right?
Yeah.